Since episodes 5, 6, and 7 for Daredevil Born Again have now been released, I might as well repeat what I did with the first 2 episodes of the show and cover them all in one video, you know, to save for time. And with the idea in mind, let's just get right into the video. First things first, allow me to go over 2 things from my last 3 videos, more specifically, my criticisms for the show. This show is a mediocre continuation of the original series, and features several problems such as mishandled character departures, repeated storylines with little to nothing new added to them, one singular case of character inconsistency, wasted characters and or plot devices, useless CGI, and mishandled side plots. All of these add up to the reason why I said the show kinda sucks in the original video. Now granted, you may find some, if not most of these petty, but I think they go to show just how inept the writers of this show are when writing a continuation of the original. Because if you're going to continue something that was already perfect without you, you better be just as good, if not better. And right now, this show is failing to meet that standard. Also, I think it's important to note that while I may not like this show, that doesn't mean you as the viewer don't have to either. Again, this entire video and everything that has come before it is entirely my opinion, and you can agree to disagree with it as you please. Oh, and before I forget, I judge each episode on its own and will judge the entire show as a whole when it's finished, mostly because the original show had such good episodes that could easily stand on its own 2 feet. Okay, now with all that said, let's get right into the review. Oh right, I almost forgot. Back in my last review video, I mentioned that I would redo a scene that I thought was slightly cringy and poorly done. And you know what? I was wrong. Yeah, it turns out I actually had a bad take for once and I decided to say I'm wrong. Of course, don't get it twisted. I still find the scene cringy sometimes, especially when I'm alone taking a shower. But other than that, the scene itself was still handled pretty well and I was wrong for saying otherwise. Alright, now with those 2 things out of the way, let's get right into the reviews. Starting with episode 5. If I wanted to tell someone what a filler episode was without actually telling them, I'd just show them this episode, because that's essentially what it is. An episode with the sole purpose of telling you, yes, this show actually does take place in the same universe as the MCU. And I guess the writers thought that this was more important than the Muse storyline we started last episode. And put a pin on this topic because we're gonna circle back to it later. Of course, I won't neglect the obvious buildup of Matt turning back into Daredevil this episode, or the good characterization this episode does for both Matt and the side characters, but I think it's important to state that this is the only thing the episode has going for it, as it has nothing else to contribute outside of that. I say this because the last 4 episodes were able to deliver the very 2 things that I mentioned this episode offered, effectively making it useless. Don't worry, I will. And take that pin I gave you and throw it away because I'm about to use 1 stone for 2 birds. If I removed this episode from the entire season, it wouldn't change anything that happens in episode 6, and it most certainly wouldn't take away from the impact the Muse storyline has, as it only serves to do 3 things that were either A, already confirmed multiple times and alluded to in the original show, and B, could have been done in a much more subtle way, taking place in just 1 line like that Miles Morales reference, or as a mural like in No Way Home. I mean, think about it. They could have had the Muse make a mural of Kamala Khan, and have that be one of the many investigated by both Wilson and Matt in episode 6. The Muse has made it clear he's willing to do both heroes and villains, so it would have been a much more efficient way to set up your characters and the universe you're in, without wasting the audience time by making them watch an episode that didn't even have to exist. Now I get the nuance of what a filler episode can do for both the story and its characters, but when that same filler episode doesn't actually add anything new that was done efficiently, then you might as well just put the fries in the bag and stop wasting my time. Also, this series is 9 episodes long. Why the hell does it even need a filler episode to begin with? I guess the only upside here is that this is my only complaint, as the rest of the episode was pretty nice. For a useless filler episode, episode 6 is where we finally get Matt going back to being Daredevil, and in all honesty, I think it was handled fairly well. I will say right now though, I don't like the suit. Yeah, the color is immaculate and the entire look is good, but me personally, I think it has the same problems that almost all Marvel suits have. And here I thought they were finally going in the right direction with Spider-Man's No Way Home suit, but I guess I put my faith in the wrong corporation. As for the actual episode, I think it was pretty solid overall, which actually means something when I've said this sentiment for the past 3 videos. I think the storyline with Wilson and his politics are starting to lean a bit into bad Marvel storytelling, where you just get cliches after cliches instead of complex characters and interesting dynamics, something that the original show had down to a science. As when we got cliche characters and plot points, they were at least handled in an interesting way and didn't rely on the demonization of the other side to make the main character more likable. See the FBI side plot with Rain and Deem in season 3. But the storyline with Matt trying to leave Daredevil behind and eventually going back to it to save Angela was a payoff that was actually done fairly well, even if the foundation was to begin with, as even though we didn't get what we should have gotten with the setup, it was at least able to properly build up Matt actually going back to being Daredevil, and give a decent payoff of Matt being Daredevil and saving Angela. Although I am kind of worried about how the writers are going to handle Matt going back to being Daredevil, and every other character's reaction to it, as this show already dehumanized the elites within New York, so the same thing will probably happen to the anti-vigilante task force. Also, before I forget, the BB report is still limited to just an intermission in between scenes, which is really a waste considering the massive potential of this character. But you know what? Let me play nice here and give this show another compliment. The fight between Muse and Daredevil, as well as Adam and Wilson, was honestly the best part of the episode, and the scene between Matt and Angela would have to come in second place to that, as these scenes give me hope that this show can turn around and actually be decent. Of course, I doubt that will actually happen given how only 2 out of 6 episodes have been decent so far. Yeah, you're probably right. Let's see if episode 7 keeps up the same momentum and helps the show really get good. Okay, so after reacting to it, I was half right, because even though this episode is practically the best one out of the entire series so far, it has a couple of moments that just make me want to join the anti-SJW crowd and call people slurs. And don't worry, when we get to it, you'll see what I mean. But before that, let me list this episode's good points. This episode, and this entire series as a whole, has pretty good action, and while it isn't just as good as the action in the original, I gotta say it's damn near close. Like this much. Seeing Wilson try not to crash out the entire episode over Matt returning as Daredevil has been pretty interesting to see. But during his scene with Buck, he mentions that he was in prison due to Daredevil, which led me to remember the fact that we've never actually gotten an answer as to how he's even mayor at all given his criminal record. Oh yeah, that checks out. And speaking of Daredevil's return, I kind of expected more pushback from characters like the PI and McDuffie, but I guess that's my fault for having high expectations. Which, now that I think about it, someone in the comments is probably gonna timestamp me saying that and state that's the reason I don't like the show. And if that does happen, then I'll just have to respond accordingly and leave this timestamp in the reply. Continuing with the show's good points, the storyline with Heather was pretty good. I was actually surprised at the level of characterization of the task force, as I said earlier in this video that the writers probably wouldn't do this, so big ups to the writers for stepping up. Although now that I've given them their props, it's time I lay down the law on them. Reading this Reddit comment and watching McDuffie, Angela, and BB Urich in this episode has taught me one thing. This show has a really bad problem with focusing on the 2 main characters and just using the side cast when they can be useful. No, it didn't. The original show had a healthy balance of giving the main protagonist the most focus while still giving attention to the side characters, and not just simply using them as meaningless plot devices to use when useful to the story arc they're tackling. Oh, and they also didn't waste their plot devices when they could have been used for a lot more in the story. Okay, final thoughts. I personally believe that even though this abhorrent continuation of an already perfect product had a really rough start in its story, I think after 7 episodes, it's finally getting passable by college standards. Of course, most people would just say that the show has been good since episode 1 and say that I'm the one that's under the influence here, but let's be real. People are only really saying that because this show is able to bring back the old cast from the original. I bet if you just swapped the entire cast but kept everything else the same, the level of hate for the show would be a lot more apparent. Real quick, if y'all enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe so I can flex on the hoes and the haters. Also, follow my socials so that you'll know when I post a new video. And if you really enjoy my content, then consider checking out my Patreon, where I give weekly behind the scene updates, as well as an archive for all my videos. You can also get your name featured on the end credits, as well as early access to the first 2 minutes of all my videos, which also include this one. Oh, and before I forget, you also get access to exclusive videos that are going to be Patreon only. Think of it like the last episode for SpongeBob if it was behind a paywall. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.